I want to make it obviously clear as the first moment in the recording and what shows up on there. On Monday, you need to turn in your Chapter 3 test with the revisions. So as the guest teacher on Wednesday instructed you, you should be putting your own grade, whatever you feel you deserve. So I want you to be reflective about your learning and reflective about like how you show what you've learned. Some introspection, to use a couple of our roots. So on Monday, I need back your mastery with your separate page with revisions, as I saw the instructions said, separate page, put a header on, all that, back in my bin on Monday, because we are very fast approaching the Q2 cutoff. Okay. Also next week will be the Chapter 4 Mastery, which will still be on Q2. So if you are one of the people that has not been giving the appropriate amount of attention, thought, focus, whatever you want to say, to your practice work, you want to try to fix that, because we're taking the mastery for this chapter for this quarter. Last quarter, we were a little bit nicer. I pushed things to the next quarter to make it easier for you. Like, now we're real deal. This is happening now. Now, you still have like a week or so, I think even longer than that, to revise it and get it in back like before the deadline. But the cutoff for grades is next week, so we're going to get that mastery in next week. Questions? Kevin, you had a question. Yeah, you can turn in revisions now if you haven't done already. Kevin, what was your question you had a couple minutes ago?
I'll take that in class.
Okay.
Something about math.
Okay. Do I have something in there wrong?
Yeah, it said that some of my homework was turned in late.
Hey, we can get that. Catch it. So I already did the I need to pass back papers. So the homework for today, the 4-3-3, I'm not technically assigning today. Hey guys, can we stop playing? So as I said yesterday, we can't use manipulatives if you can't handle yourself. So just like the conversation in Foundations, or in Forum about like acceptable use, I have no issue saying everybody get algebra tiles except for whoever, because you've shown me you can't handle them. So we are not like building creatures on our desk. We're not making faces. Like, we are using them for educational purposes. Now, if you want to play with them, I'm fine with that, but do it some other time. AO extensions, or like, you can play with any of my stuff you want, but during class, I need you on task. Okay? So I've not asked you really to get any algebra tiles out yet. You should just have the bag on your desk. Today, we are continuing to work with algebra tiles, but in the way that we are going to simplify with zero. So to encourage that vocabulary, again, what does simplifying mean? Like, what is that word at, like, mathematically? Because people get confused by this on the test. Nathan?
Simplifying means breaking down the number.
Maybe it could, depending on the situation. But often with simplification, we're not actually breaking down. Aiden, your hand is up there.
Well, for simplify, usually when I see it on a phone, it usually means solve.
Yeah, it usually means something like solve. And really, in my head, simplify means make easier. Right? If you simplify something, you are making it easier in some way. So whether we break something apart and make it easier that way by breaking like the 10s away from the 1s, or but then really the end goal is make it as small as possible, right? Like as few numbers, as few terms. So simplifying, and I'm killing all this time because I want you to have a header on your paper, so please make sure your paper says 4-3-3. And if you really want it to have a good header, you should write simplifying with 0. Simplifying keeps the Y. It's one of those weird words that even with the ing, it keeps the Y. Just by the way.
Okay, I put it in and I was like, I'm pretty sure this spelling is
No, it keeps the Y. All right, so the first paragraph doesn't really matter, but anyone want to read for us starting here with 0? Aiden, go ahead. Sorry, he's fast on the draw.
Zero is a relative newcomer to the number system. Its first appearance was a placeholder around 400 BC in Babylon. The ancient Greeks
Philosophized,
whatever,
yeah,
about whether zero was even a number. How can nothing be something? East Indian mathematics are generally recognized as the first people to represent the quantity zero as a numeral and number in its own right about 600 AD.
So hang on for just a second, then I might switch people for this. So think about that. 0 means nothing. So what's the point of 0? If you're telling somebody how many cows you have to trade for their chickens, or how much grain you have to trade for their, like, whatever, like 0, like, I'm not going to trade you 0 of something. So for a long time, there was no 0. Question, comment?
Well, when you say you can add zeros, like when you put 1 and then you got 3 zeros on it, it's like.
Now that's not adding zeros.
Oh, yeah, it's like putting on zeros.
Yeah, we're putting on, but what we're actually doing is multiplication, which makes those zeros happen, right? It is. So 0 is just our placeholder to represent the lack of value. Right now, beyond 0, like we got our positives, we got 0, then where do we go? Negatives, right? So like missing value. So not like lack of value, but like I'm in debt or I'm missing. Eva, did you want to read? Did you have your hand up? You want to do this last paragraph here?
Zero now holds an important place in mathematics, both as a numeral representing absence of quantity and as a placeholder. Did you know there is no year 0 in the Gregorian? I probably said that wrong.
Gregorian. You're right.
Our curtain calendar system 365 days in a year. Until the creation of 0, number systems began at 1.
So that's weird. Who didn't know there's no year 0? There's BC, there's AD, but there's no 0. There's no, like, if we think of it as a number line, there's no 0. So that's kind of weird. But how weird would it have been to say we're in year 0? Like, oh, hey, welcome to the year 0 party. That'd be awkward. All right, so we're going to think about these things today. How can I create a 0? And then how can I rewrite an expression in the most efficient way, right? Make your life easier, right, Riley? Yeah, make your life easier. All right, so I want your team to discuss these, 6 questions, maybe 7, A through F here. So go ahead and label on your paper 103. All we need to write out is a really quick answer. So I do want you writing things on here. I need to update the homework board, Mr. Smith. So these 6, 7 questions, whatever, I'm going to give you a few minutes to talk about this. Just like, and I don't expect you to know all of these things. I just want you to discuss it with your peers and see if any of you have really strong opinions and why. Any questions what we're doing? We're discussing this, jotting down a quick answer. So do not move on from the question until your team is ready to move on. Cool? I'll give you a couple minutes to talk about this.
Okay, so. Okay, the first one is the sum is 0. There has to be like 2 negative numbers that are the same, or just be 0. Because it says the 2 quantities that are added up to the sum is 0. What do you know about the quantities? They're either negative numbers or the same negative numbers, or they're both 0. Oh, right.
See, B is why I want you to be careful saying add zeros.
Oh.
Maybe you'll understand what I mean.
Okay, so
What do you mean by they're both 0 or negative?
whatever he
They're
said,
both negative
negative.
numbers.
Yeah, it has to be the same.
Negative 3 and negative 3.
And positive. One of them has to be the same number. Okay.
Only in multiplication. So Brody, though, has 0 or positive plus a negative. Yeah, so if we have a positive and a negative, so remember good guy, bad guy? Like if we have a good guy 5 and a bad guy 5, they fight and like become 0. Like nobody really is left over after the fight. So be careful. We can have a negative number, we would also need to have the positive number to add with it to be opposite.
Or has to be 0. You're adding another place. No. You're multiplying.
What do you want me to see with B? B? You add 0. Not put on the end of it, you add 0. Give like 15 plus 0.
Oh.
Guys, be careful with B. Add 0 does not mean we put a 0 on the end of the number. Add is a mathematical term. So add is addition. If I put 0 with the number using addition, what happens? So keep working. I'm going to give you a couple more minutes.
Can you wait? What is the opposite of 0?
Oh my gosh.
But then, okay, well, I'm sorry.
It's like insulated. It's like a little water bottle.
What is the opposite of 0? Negative 0? There is no opposite. Wait, no.
What is opposite?
No, it'd be nothing. It would still be 0. What? No, because the opposite
Opposites add is
No, 0 is no negative. It's not positive. 0 is like a fine line.
Is 0 positive?
Oh my god.
What?
X
You look like
is
you're asking a
0
question.
and 0 even. No, One. No.
There.
Exactly.
Oh my god. My arm
It's
like
even.
something
It's
on
even.
That was so small to touch my arm, but I'm normally like drinking coffee or something, so often this hole is
I
so
don't get
deep.
it.
Yeah.
But it's all
All right, let's pull us back together. I know we're not all completely done, but for the sake of time, we only have about a half hour left together, a little less than that. Let's random card this thing.
No, please.
No. I mean, good thing I'm in charge.
Yes.
Sophia. When we think about two quantities adding to some 0, now that's kind of repetitive because sum comes from adding. But if they're added to some 0, what do we know about those quantities? What do you think, Steve?
That one of the numbers is like a positive number and one of the numbers.
Ooh, we either sum a positive with its negative, or I had some other people with another way that we got there. What was the other way I could have two numbers that add to 0? Ethan?
0 and 0.
Yeah, both 0.
That's what I said.
So either, now another way to say this, the positive negative, is you sum two, what do we call numbers when one's positive, one's negative, but they're the same like number?
Opposite.
Opposites, right? So we sum two opposites is another way we could say that. Sorry, my E's kind of sloppy there. Brody, if we add 0 to a number, what happens? Hey guys, why so many side conversations? We're back together now. If you want to keep engaging on your own, that's fine. But like, we're as a class now. Okay. You get in trouble because of Aiden? Or
No, she's talking to Joey.
Talking to Joey because I told him that
No, don't
she
talk
thinks
to me.
that
Negative
the
0.
are opposites.
It's okay. Now that I've said it, maybe he believes it.
But you're blaming me. You're like, oh, you get in trouble.
It's-
Is
I'm
there a negative
joking.
0 or not? Yeah, you better be
All right.
joking.
Back together. Brody, if I add 0 to a number, what happens? What do you mean nothing? Stays the same, right? So nothing happens. No change. That's like if somebody comes up to your Phoenix Fair booth
See?
and they're like, "Can I give you $0 for this?" You don't want to say yes to that. That would not make you any money. I don't know. I'm sitting over here with the card. Ivan, if I multiply a number by 0, what happens?
0.
Ivan.
Sorry, I thought you.
Okay, that one's Aiden's, and I'll come back to Ivan. Aiden is right. If we multiply by 0, and guys, this is one that people like to goof up. if you multiply by 0, you're saying I have 0 amount of, so think like I have 0 dozen eggs right now. That would be 0 times 12. I have 0 dozens, but that's 0, right? I have 0 dozen eggs. I have 0, so we multiply by 0, we get
You always
0.
get 0 when you multiply that. Oh, sorry, Yvonne.
Now, this question. Sorry, Ivan, because now this one's coming to you. What's the opposite of 0? Is that 0 or 0? Is it with a question mark, or is that what you think it is? That's what you think it is? Who thinks it's negative 0?
Oh.
Who thinks it's 0? Who wasn't quite sure? So when we talk about opposites, hold on. Who can define opposite for me? Like, who can give me a definition, Riley?
Okay, so if you have like a number line, then there's the 0 in between.
Okay.
There's the same amount of numbers on each side.
So same distance, right? So like 10 and negative 10, same distance from that 0.
So like, yeah, if you have 2 and negative 2, they're the same distance from 0.
Yeah. So what does that support? What's the opposite of 0?
Nothing.
Well,
It's 0.
I'll give you nothing because like nothing is 0, but hey guys, this group is about to ruin the sit anywhere. So here's your warning, because I keep having to come back and ask you to correct your behavior. Like, you're the group that right now is making me worry. So 0 is the opposite of 0. Why is there no negative 0? Can anyone talk to that? Why there's no negative 0? Layla?
Because 0 isn't positive.
0 isn't positive. So guys, get this through your brain right now. Because this is an argument some people like to kind of think is funny. Like, 0 doesn't have value, and only numbers with value can be positive or negative. If you're talking about a lack of something, the fact that I have no pizzas, that's not negative, but it's also not positive. I got no pizzas. It doesn't have a positive or negative value.
0 is basically the fine line between positive and negative. It starts
It's
off.
the literal line.
It can start off a negative. It can start off a positive. Basically, and it's
Now, if 3 numbers have a product of 0, what does product mean, Eva? The answer of multiplication. So do you want to give me the answer of what we know if 3 numbers have a product of 0? There's at least 1 0. I think a lot of us didn't get to this. So at least one number is 0. Now, could I have 2 of the numbers be 0? Could I have all of the numbers be 0? Yeah, I can do 0 times 0 times 5, 0 times 0 times 0. 0 times 8,574 times 2, still 0. If any of the numbers are 0 involved in multiplication, if there's even 1 0, guys, I could have 17 numbers multiplied together. Hint, hint, this is a trick teachers sometimes play. They'll say, solve this multiplication problem. 2 times 8 times, and if you start solving it before you read the whole problem, and then at the very end, you've multiplied like 20 numbers together. You type this all in your calculator, and then it says times 0.
And all that work is for nothing.
And all that work is for nothing. That's always why we tell you to read through the whole problem first. But that is a trick some teachers will play. I sometimes do that. I sometimes don't. I don't like things that waste your time. But be careful with that. If there's a single 0 in a multiplication, it makes 0. And is 0 even or odd? Alana, what do you think about that?
I don't think it's either.
You don't think it's either? Who agrees with Alana? It's neither. It's not even. It's not odd. What? Now, here, I have a question. I have a question about this. So what makes a number even? Joey? Well, you can have even negatives. Like, -4 is an even number.
-2, -4.
Sophia?
Oh wait, what? Oh, what makes a number even? Like if you can like divide it and get like.
You can divide it by 2, right, and get an even number. So, wait.
It's so even. I told everyone that.
Yeah, so wait, is it an even number that spits out?
No, it's an odd number. No, it's even.
We could divide by 2 and get Adrian?
Half the number.
Yeah, we can get an integer, right? So think about 3. 3's odd. It gives us 1.5, right? That point. But Ethan brought up, if I had 2 divided by 2, 2's even, that gives me just 1. It's an entire value. But wait. 0 divided by 2 gives me 0.
So it's even.
Is it though? Because is 0 a number?
Maybe. Yes.
No,
It is because it goes zero to.
We're going to come back to this. All right. Get out 2 1 squares. Get out 2 1 squares. And so flip your notes page over. Flip your notes page over. Yo, flip your notes over.
Wait, I need to flip them over.
Yes.
Facing the whole page.
Yes. Da-da.
On the back of your page, we gotta be able to bring it back. Okay? It's fine that we chat with each other while we're doing stuff, but you gotta be able to bring it back. We just saved 25 pieces of paper. Okay, this is supposed to be a handout paper, but it's really stupid because it just says expression map with a rectangle. So there really wasn't a point to print it. The reason we're going to do this, now some of you won't need to do this, but I figured we would all do it together real quick, is when we work with a bunch of algebra tiles, we're going to end up with a lot of stuff on our desk. We're going to end up with a lot of stuff on our desk. We don't want to look at everything at the same time. We only want to look at certain tiles. So those tiles that we're going to look at, we're going to put those onto or into, whatever you want to say, the expression mat. So right now, put your positive 1 and your negative 1 on the expression mat. Now some of you have positive 2 on the expression mat right now. You should have a blue side up, or like purple, whatever you want to say this color is, navy, and a red side up. Well, you shouldn't be using the clear one. Sorry, I thought I said that on the first day we got these out. If you're using the clear ones, you can't flip it. You just need like a blue and a red. So you can use these, you just can't flip it. So these together would make 0. No, there's more. There's a bunch right here.
Be quiet.
Hush your mouth.
All right. So if we hold up. If we have a blue square and we have a red square, what do these equal? Eva? 0. Now hold up. Flip your notes back over. CPM. Shh, trust me. CPM uses shaded or unshaded. So I need you in your notes to notate, like draw a box and shade it, like make it grayed in. And notate that that's positive 1. Because when you're looking in the textbook isn't printed in color. So just using your pencil, if we just draw a square and shade it in, that's positive for any of them. Whether it's 1 or X or whatever. So we could say positive 1, and I would even write on there shaded. Then make a square, leave it open, and notate on your paper that actually is negative 1. Open. And why they do that, it took me a lot of time to make peace with this. Because, like, way back when the shadeds meant negative for some reason, this is missing the inside, right? So if it's missing the inside of it, it's lacking 1. If this has the inside of it, it has 1. So shaded is positive. You have it. Empty is negative. You're missing that. Does that make sense to us?
Yeah.
Shaded is you have it. It's there. It's positive. The empty is what we're missing.
Is this on my homework? Is it?
Yeah, these sort of things. Yeah, shaded
Oh
and unshaded.
my God.
Yes.
Okay, I already did that.
Yes. Well, it's going to continue to be on. So guys, like this stuff is still used with my high school math 2 class that I teach. Like you're going to use algebra tiles the whole rest of your career, and potentially even in college because it's just a visual representation of what we're doing. Yeah, but in high school we're like representing quadratic equations and stuff with it, so it's a lot deeper.
You don't hate words.
Yeah, the 8th graders that I teach is a high school class. Yeah. Yeah, they're 2 years accelerated math. All right, so if we had out on our expression mat, and you don't need to get them out because I know the 1 tiles are a little bit hard to get to. If you had on your mat positive 6 tiles and negative 6 tiles, what happens? It's 0, right? So I want us not one more time, for another time, to write, what's the fancy way we talk about opposites when we're talking about that they add up to 0? Yeah, but what do we call them when they add to 0? Eva? Oh, close. Absolute value makes everything positive. Please write this in your notes. What we're talking about here is additive inverses. Additive inverses sum to 0. I'm trying to merge my letters together, apparently. That's just another name for opposites. So just like constant of proportionality is another way to say unit rate, additive inverse is if you are asked on an assessment, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, what's the additive inverse of a value? It's just the opposite. It's just saying what could you add to it to make 0. Questions? We should have seen this before, right? Additive inverse should not be new. That should be familiar. It's okay if you don't have it memorized.
It's just sum to 0.
Additive inverse is sum to 0. It's just another way to say opposites. It's like 5 and negative 5, 6 and negative 6, 1 and negative 1.
Wait, do you divide it?
No, so that's just an underline. So sum, Ava, sum always means add, right? So sum to 0 means when we add them, they make 0. You're distracting, you're breaking rule number 1. Then you should be in your head. We can do that. That's why we think. Right? Thinking is how we talk to ourselves. So what if then? And you can pull this out if you want because they're a little bit easier to retrieve. What if we put a positive x and a negative x on our algebra mat or on our expression mat?
A would equal x.
If you have, go ahead and pull out 2 x tiles. Flip 1 blue up, 1 red up. 1 blue up, 1 red up. Now on your mat, bring it back. This shouldn't be very difficult.
Oh, those are X
Sorry, these are x squareds, but it doesn't matter. We can talk about this either way. You don't need to have x squareds. You're fine to have x's. You're good. You're good. Because we're not using the greens, remember. But if I have 1 blue, 1 red, whether it's x or x squared, what happens when I have a positive and a negative of the same value?
0.
They're gonna equal 0. So you guys, whether we're talking about numbers or variables, opposites sum to 0. So that can help us clean things up and get rid of some values. So are we good on understanding opposites, no matter what they are, numbers, variables, whatever, add to 0? Cool?
Basically the same thing that we did with fighting.
Yes, it is the good guy, bad guy, but now we're not just talking numbers, we're involving variables also. So you're absolutely correct, we're just extending it. We're going to the next step.
Yay, Chuck E. Cheese.
All right, so on your mat, pull out these tiles. Pull out these tiles and put them on your mat, just A. 2 1 tiles, 2 X tiles. We're talking X rectangles. Sorry, do not fall into the trap that I did. Another X rectangle. 3 -1 tiles.
What?
And then 3 negative X tiles. Now, if you made your rectangle on your paper too small, it's okay. Just use your entire paper as your expression map. So the tiles on your paper are what we're looking at.
Wait. So 2 negative tiles.
I'm going to pull them out also. So just go ahead and get them out.
Jesus. Oh my God.
So guys, those of you who are just making noise just because you can't not make noise, why? Like, why when you go to get out algebra tiles, do you have to sing or make noise or like, why?
Singing is beautiful. Not in math class. Excuse me. Singing is beautiful.
Would you like me to incorporate some singing in my lessons? Opposites are negatives and positives. Additive inverse is the fancy name. I feel like Jess from New Girl.
Really crank them out and then do
That would be awesome. All right, everyone should have this out. At least I think. Check my work. Is this correct? Do you have this out? No, I think I'm good. 2, and then 2x, another x, -3, and -3 x's. All right, now, hold up. Who can tell me what we can do to make this easy, right? To simplify. Ava?
To separate it into the actual, like, bothers.
So, like, sort, like, put similar things next to each other.
No, put, like, the X tiles together to, like,
What about bothers?
Yeah, so, yeah, exactly. So, Ava, what she's particularly saying if we use the vocab is sort like terms. So I'm going to bring my 1s over with my 1s and my x's over with my x's. Agreed. Absolutely love it. What next? Joey, you had your hand up. You know the next step? Otherwise I'll go to Aiden.
Wait.
I have the next step.
Okay.
So, you want to add the negative and the positive to make 0.
So every time I can put a negative with a positive, I can make 0, right? So there's a 0. There's a 0. There's a 0. There's a 0. There's a
We
0.
only have 1.
-1.
And we are left
Positive 1.
all on his lonesome with -1. So please,
Red was negative?
yes.
Oh my God.
Aiden, I've been saying that since we pulled out algebra tiles.
I know,
So again, you're kind of selling yourself out. That's some
I just
questions.
forgot.
So please, on your paper, in your notes, write out what we started with. We had, well, apparently Smart Ink doesn't want to work on here. Write out the expression from A. 2 plus 2x plus x minus 3. I'm going to get my smart board back. So please, I should see pencils moving. 2 plus 2x plus x plus negative 3 plus negative 3x. What we are doing is simplifying. Because we are going to put numbers together to make things easier. Simplify, right? Make it easier. What did we say this ends up making?
-1.
-1. And you can put it in a parenthesis if you want, or you do not have to. This is the simplified form of that expression. This is the exact same thing. But notice how much less I needed to write. I'd much rather write -1 than that whole thing. So do the same thing with b, but please write out b first. Since you already got your pencil in your hand, write it out. So b, we've got -2. I'm going to put that in parentheses to start. Plus 2x plus 1.
Wait, no, that's -1. I mean negative x. Wait, what? Negative?
No, I'm in b up there.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Oh, so you're saying the negative x instead of saying minus x, do
No, I
plus
said
negative?
1 minus x, but I thought it was negative x, and so then I
So it
did
is.
plus negative x.
So, hold on. Ava brings up a really good point. She said, I thought it was 1 minus x, but then I thought it was negative. And then if I'm trying to take something away, I can't really show that on the expression map. Right? We can't show subtraction on just the mat that we have, but I could add the negative. Am I allowed to switch subtraction to plus a negative? Yeah. So when we're writing these out even originally, write the entire thing as addition. So then plus -5 and plus 2x. Simplify this. Figure out what we get. You may use your mat and your tiles and lay these all out.
Wait, is it x this tile?
X is the rectangle, the blue rectangle.
This?
Yeah, that. So -2, 2 x's, 1.
No, you don't get a one tiny. You're not a percentage. No, and he can't hang burgers on his ears. Oh, well then good.
Check what I have up here. Is this what you got?
Yeah. Oh wait, what? Five.
Oh, I see what you
Oh
did.
my God, Mr.
Aiden, you need to control your actions. No, you cannot have that tone with me after you were making goat noises. You need to control your behavior. You need to not sit with Ava. You need to make that choice. You can do 5 1 tiles. Yeah. Hey, you don't have to use a 5 tile here. You could use 5 individual tiles. I just didn't want to search for 5 individual tiles. Another random card. They're releasing way too early because it's a Friday schedule. We got time. Don't you worry. Adrian, what could I group together up here? Shh. Hey, bring it back. What could I group together to make life easier? Ooh, the -5, so I can put all my negatives together over here. I should probably also bring this guy too, right? Since he's also a 1. So I move him over, then these kind of come that way.
You can make a 0 with the negative x.
Thank you, Brandon. I can make a 0 here, right? So Brandon said make a 0 with the x's. And then I can make a 0 here, right? So here's my zeros. I'll kind of like get them off to the side. And we can actually pull them off the mat if we want. But what do we have left? 3x and a -6, which Brendan said the absolute perfect way because we want to use the variable first. So if we were to write this out, the simplified form of this expression, what we get when we do the simplification is 3x, what do we have? Plus -6. That's our simplified form. Does this make sense? We're not done. I still got 3 minutes. You can put your tiles back in the bag if you want. We might do another, but you can always put them back in and reset. Let's see how long we have. Put your tiles back in your bag. We're going to do a couple of these just real quick together. Nathan, your card is up, sir. If I look at A here, so imagine, bring it back. Imagine this is what we have on our maps. Can you group together some zeros and tell me what we have when we're done?
Equals.
Nathan. Can you find any zeros? Like any groups that can make zeros? Yeah, so like these positive 2x's and these negative 2x's, those all make zeros. What else? Yeah, so then the 2 and the 2, those are negatives. Or zeros, sorry. Hey guys, Nathan's talking. I can make one more zero, right? This is my last zero set that I can make, so what am I left with? 1, just positive 1. Take a moment in your head, look at B, look up here, look at B. Think in your head, what do we have after we simplify and make zeros where we can? So for B, take a moment, shh, don't talk. Anyone want to tell me what you think we have in B? I can't come back to you. You just had that one. Kevin, we haven't talked yet today really much. What do we have?
We have, I can see that we have about 3 zeros that we can have, and
I see that 0, this, that. Every positive, negative that can go together. So what do we have when we're done?
just 2x squared plus negative 1.
Absolutely. 2x squared plus a negative 1. So what's your homework for Monday? Revisions for Chapter 3 Mastery. Have a great weekend. Go to Phoenix Fair. Buy stuff from your friends. I cannot buy everything from everyone. Nice. What's that? Oh my gosh, that's awesome, dude. I'd almost rather do that.